Happy New Year, everybody! I wanted to let you all know that SpongeBob SquarePants, the complete 12th season, is coming to DVD in only 11 more days, leaking episodes that still haven't aired in the US of A yet, minus Kwarantined Krab. And you know why that is, for the case of Kwarantined Krab. And now we are going to review Bambi 2, which came out straight to DVD February 7th, 2006. That's a week before Valentine's Day, which is on the 14th. It all begins with snowflakes falling through the forest, and Bambi calling for his mother, like so. Mother! Sadly, his dad brings the terrible news to him, saying, "Your mother can't be with you anymore." Great voices, by the way, Patrick and Alexander. You two make a great duo. Or made. But you guys know what I'm getting at. Anyway, the Great Prince takes Bambi all the way back to his den, or cave, or whatever you guys want to call it, where Bambi is told by the look on his father's face that he'll be sleeping. And then Fred Dow was all like, "Poor little guy. So young to be without a mother." And then the Great Prince says, "Find me a suitable doe to raise Bambi, please." And then Fred Dow was all like, but does can hardly feed themselves in the winter. The food is so scarce. Maybe you could?" And then the Great Prince thinks about it for a minute and says, "Very well. You have until spring." And then Fred Dow was all like, "Oh, great. Who better to raise the young prince than the Great Prince himself?" Get it? Woo! Anyway, the night passes by and everything starts melting, which is why I gave it the name Bambi 2, The Meltdown. Get it? Everything's melting. Then that little drop of snow falls, or water, falls onto Bambi's snout, causing him to wake up and sneeze. You would even say, "Bless you." And then when he realizes his father's not there, he just rushes out of the den and falls and falls back first down into the snow. Then Bambi looks up at a disapproving face from his father. And I'm telling this how the Great Prince learned to be a better father. The Great Prince goes, "Bambi, a prince awakens before the forest dies." But then suddenly, Bambi's stomach growls. And the Great Prince says, "You should eat." But Bambi looks around and makes a face that says, Eat? Eat what? All I see is snow." And then the Great Prince finds something for Bambi to eat, but you know the look on Bambi's face when he eats it. He is not really satisfied, but doesn't want to show it to his father. And then the Great Prince says, "Come along, we must check on the other deer in Southwood." This gets Bambi really excited, because he's spending time with his father. He slides around in the snow going, "Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo," repeatedly. But the Great Prince sadly stops him by saying, "A prince does not woo-hoo." He maintains control at all times. He displays dignity, and he walks with pride. Because the Great Prince is king of the forest. And it computes that way. When they get to that cliff where they can watch the other deer playing in the meadow, like playing their version of football or something, Bambi says, "It sure makes it difficult to play with them." The Great Prince says, the Great Prince doesn't say anything. He just looks down on his son, who then says, "Play is a healthy part of the young deer's development." And then the Great Prince is all like, "Is that so?" And then Bambi's all like, "Uh-huh. Mother says so." And that's the one thing where the Great Prince says, I think it's best to leave the past in the past. A prince does not look back, only ahead. And then, later that day, Bambi stumbles upon Thumper, who is covered in snow. He even shakes his back leg, making Thumper dizzy. And then Thumper's all like, boy, am I glad to see you. If nobody knows their ages, by the way, Thumper is older than Bambi. Let's just put it like that. Thumper is even closer to being a teenager than Bambi. Like, much closer. You can even see that in the beginning of the original where Bambi's born. Anyway, his sisters come after him saying that they want to go see the groundhog with him. Thumper refuses, then his mom shows up right on cue. Saying, what did your father tell you about playing with your sisters? And then Thumper recites that saying, a family that plays together stays together. After having some trouble keeping up with the Great Prince, the Great Prince allows Bambi to go see the groundhog because he says, I have to go to the South Meadow to check on the others, and it's very far away. You go see the groundhog. I'll meet up with you later. And then Bambi and Thumper stumble upon a sleeping Flower who's hibernating. Because flowers sleep all winter, and Flower didn't mind being called a flower. And then Thumper's all like, come on, Flower, you're gonna miss the groundhog. And the Flower's all like, I hope the groundhog sees his shadow so I can get back to hibernating. Then Fernell was there and he says, oh, the young prince. Why, this is a surprise. And then he says, without further ado, the groundhog, who is apparently too shy to come out of his hole. His hidey hole, as a matter of fact, pun entirely intended. And then the groundhog is all like, but I'm too scared to see my shadow. And then Fernell will be all like, but that's the point. When he comes out, the cloud covers up the sun. And then the groundhog is all like, woohoo! And then everyone sings a little gay song of spring. And then Fernell was all like, oh no, that song again. Which kind of foreshadows the SpongeBob episode, Sing a Song of Patrick. Which didn't air until a year later. Anyway, Ronno shows up, scaring the groundhog into his own little pinball game, or whatever. The kids are disappointed, they walk off, and then Ronno's all like, hey, where's everyone going? Forest on fire? That gets Thumper's sisters shivering in fear. And then Ronno says his name and introduces the boys on his head, Stab and Jab. That's right, Stab and Jab. And then Faline's all like, well, I hope the three of you have a nice day. And then Ronno tells them a story about, that starts off with, that's where I saw a man. And then once the story's over, Faline says, wow, that's unbelievable. And then Bambi's all like, yeah, unbelievable. And then Ronno's all like, you calling me a liar? You want to spar? And then Bambi's all like, what? No! And then Thumper's all like, clobber him, Bambi! And then Ronno makes fun of Bambi's name by saying, isn't that a girl's name? Bambi makes an angry glare, but then Ronno's all like, just a little friendly competition. Luckily, Ronno's mom calls him off. And then Faline's all like, yeah, perhaps you should get going. Then Thumper's all like, Mama's boy, why don't you go back to your mama? And then Thumper's mom is all like, Thumper! And then Thumper's all like, coming, Mama. Gotta bounce. See ya, Bambi. And then Flower's mom picks him up for that one scene. And then Faline offers to walk Bambi home. But Bambi says, no, thank you. My daddy's coming for me. Several hours of waiting later, Bambi falls into a deep sleep, where he dreams of seeing his mom once again. Where his mom says that one line Littlefoot's mother said, which fits perfectly no matter what anyone says. I'm always with you. Even if you can't see me, I'm here. Bambi gets a little too into the dream later that evening, as you can see him snuggling up into the snow. That's how good of a dream he was having. Mm-hmm. But then, that deer whistle lures him in. And now Bambi's, quote-unquote, riding the hook. Like, you know, like he's... like hunters are going fishing for deer. But it's actually called hunting. Then crows swoop in, saying, man, man! And Bambi's in the headlights. Just out of the blue like that. And then the Great Prince hears about this and says, Bambi's out there. When he sees Bambi frozen, he shouts, run, Bambi! Unfortunately, Bambi can't move. He's frozen up in peril. Some dogs come after him. Luckily, the Great Prince swoops in, and the dogs can't handle his sharp hooves or antlers. You can even have them going, my leg! My leg! But then, when it's their chance to escape, Bambi still can't move, even when the Great Prince says, run, Bambi! And then the Great Prince has no choice but to push aside in the snow and say, go! Now! And then they run off into the forest. It's almost as if the Great Prince would make a legit basketball coach at that scene. And then, once they're safe and the two of them are catching their breaths, Bambi's all like, but it was Mother! I heard her voice. And the Great Prince would be all like, what if I hadn't gotten there in time? You could have been... And then he thinks for a minute about what he's about to say and changes it to, when I tell you to run, you run! Never freeze like that. Ever! Excellent voice acting, by the way, Patrick Stewart. Bambi tries to apologize, but the Great Prince hardly accepts. Heartbreaking, right? Fortunately, he takes a deep breath before he takes it any farther than he already has and says, let's go home. And then Bambi's silent the whole way there, and then a thought dawns on him, and he goes, she's never coming back? And the Great Prince sees the sad look in Bambi's eyes and says, no. Because those eyes remind the Great Prince of his queen's eyes. That's how personally he's taken the demise. And while Bambi's crying himself to sleep in the den or whatever, the Great Prince is looking down on that one spot where Bambi's mom was shot. He then goes to friend Owl a little while later saying, winter is coming to an end. You should have very little trouble finding Bambi a new home. Cut to spring! In only a few days' time. Or whatever. And then Thumper and Flower are hiding. Flower says, why are we hiding from your sisters? I think they're sweet. And then Thumper's all like, well, you don't have to live with them. That's cold, Thumper. And then the Great Prince is all like, and then the Great Prince just leaves Bambi to the den where it's safe. With no food to feed his son. I mean, come on, Great Prince. The least he could have was, like, breakfast. And then Thumper sees how sad Bambi is and goes, hey, Bambi, why don't you tell your bestest friend what's wrong? He says bestest instead of best. Nice acting, Brandenberg. Brendenberg. And then Bambi's all like, well, my daddy scolded me last night because I rose in peril. I'm not what a prince is supposed to be. I want to be brave, like him. And then Thumper is all like, is that it? I can teach you how to be brave. Like this. And then Flower's all like, I think he's got a hairball. And then Thumper's all like, no, Flower, I'm being brave. And then he says, stand very straight, stick out your chest, take the deepest breath you've ever took in your whole life. And then when Thumper tells him to let it out with a big grr, Bambi's growl is, bah! And then Thumper just blinks and says, you're gonna need a lot of practice. And then they all pretend they're predatory animals. Well, Flower pretends he's a turtle and says, what? Turtles are so scary. And then they practice on a hornet, which chases them with a whole herd. They echo their growls into a hollow log. They even make silly faces in a stream. And then Thumper's all like, see, nothing to it. All it takes is one good arrgh. And then a porcupine pops out, and he's my old man Jenkins. The guys go, Porcupine! And they all shriek and ran off. And the porcupine says, get out of here and stay out, you trespassing hooligans! Remind you of old man Jenkins from SpongeBob. Speaking of which, Bambi's my Gary the Snail. And then Flower goes, well, we can always swim across. And then Thumper's all like, uh-oh. Because the Great Prince is walking in a near distance. And then Bambi's all like, this is it, guys. I can show my dad how brave I am. That's right, Bambi. You can show him that the Great Prince doesn't have to worry too much about you. You might even teach him something. And then Thumper goes, don't worry, I'll take care of your dad. And then when he spots the dad, he's all like, help! Help! There's a thing! And he's got these eyes and these claws. And he walks around like this. And you gotta see it! The Great Prince gives Thumper a suspicious look like this. And then Thumper's all like, well, what are you waiting for? And then the Great Prince is all like, okay, Thumper, I'm coming. And then meanwhile, Bambi is trying to cross the bridge. And the porcupine says, nice try. Try again. Try again. Try again. And then he tells a story about walking across. That's where Bambi rolls his eyes at that. He's like, oh boy. And then, noticing his dad comes by, while the porcupine is distracted by the story, he leaps over. And then Flower's all like, you did it! And then the porcupine's all like, well, yeah, you did it all right. And then he teleports from one side of the log to the other. Unfortunately, the porcupine gets his quill stuck in the log. But then Bambi breaks the log. And then the porcupine's sharp quills break the wood in half. And then guess where he lands? It's Bambi's quote-unquote flu shot. Bambi shrieks real loud enough for the Great Prince to hear. And the Great Prince says, what was that? And then Thumper's all like, I didn't hear anything. Probably a bird. Yeah, that's it. A bird. Imagine if he said scallop instead. Unfortunately, the Great Prince doesn't buy it this time. And the Thumper goes, oh no! And then Bambi just hides himself under the water when the Great Prince comes by. The Porcupine asks what the Great Prince is looking at and rudely calls him a big moose. Mr. Porcupine, there is a difference! Get your facts straight! Sorry about that, Bob. Just had to do that.
That's alright.
And then the Great Prince clears his throat angrily at Thumper, who gives a chuckle that says, nice, Prince. And then just, no! And then once the Great Prince is out of sight, Bambi gasps for air. And then he's all like, how does it look, guys? And then his rear end, with his tail down, shows needles.
Ouch.
And then Thumper's all like, well, I'm not gonna lie, None. It ain't pretty. And then Bambi's all like, it's hopeless. I'm a coward. And then Thumper's all like, no, you're not. You're brave. Yoink. He ends up plucking the needles out. You can tell how much pain Bambi's in each time he reacts by saying, ow! Meanwhile, Faline hears that shriek. Like, Faline's all like, what was that? And Ronno's all like, oh, probably just some poor dumb animal caught in a trap. So anyway, but Faline's too distracted. When she hears that sound again, she's all like, Bambi! And Ronno's all like, hey! I wasn't finished talking about me! Come on, Ronno. Not everything's about you, you know. And then, when Bambi sees Faline coming over, he quickly turns around. And then Faline's all like, what happened? And then Flower says, Bambi got jabbed with a porcupine. Thus giving the big splash away. Bambi tries to move so Faline doesn't see, but Thumper plucks it out, exposing Bambi's pain, saying, got it. Really, Thumper? When Bambi's in a tight spot? And then Ronno's all like, I'm surprised to see you still around after you froze out on the meadow and right in front of the Great Prince of the forest. And then Faline says, Ronno! And then Ronno's all like, don't worry. Without cowards, we couldn't tell who the brave ones are. And then Bambi's all like, you take that back! Ah! And then Ronno's all like, oh, yeah, sure. Come on, Faline. And then Bambi's all like, you leave her alone! Please? And then Thumper's all like, you tell him, Bambi! And then Bambi gives him a look that says, Thumper, you're not helping. And then Ronno says, does the young prince play with the little bunny and the little skunk? Ronno Blacktail. That should be his last name, by the way. You say that again, you're in big trouble, mister. Don't worry, I'm not a hunter, no. Let's just say there's a timeout chair with his name on it. Anyway, Thumper pushes Bambi, pushing Ronno into the mud. And then Ronno's like, and Faline says, run, Bambi! Thumper just saddles up onto Bambi's back. And then Ronno's running after them like, chocolate! Chocolate! As a reference to chocolate with nuts from SpongeBob SquarePants. And then when they come across that one jump, Thumper's all like, other way, other way! But then Ronno's right where they are. And then Thumper's all like, turn around, turn around! And then Bambi makes a brave face and they jump. They make the cut, and then Thumper's all like, what's the matter, Ronno? Too scared? Look at him shaking. Now who's a baby? You big baby. Unfortunately, Bambi is stopped by an angry great prince who actually sees the jump Bambi made. Like, he says, how did you make that? Wait a minute, did you jump? And then Bambi's all like, yes, sir. And then the great prince is all like, I haven't made a jump like that until I had antlers. Then you can see Bambi making that smile, saying, like, I'm finally doing it! We're finally getting somewhere. Then the great prince makes a short smile, saying, well now. Then he makes a face that says, wait a minute, what am I doing? And then he clears his throat and says, yes, well. He receives validation from his father, finally. Aside from a porcupine incident, Bambi's having a good day. And then Thumper's all like, I guess he saw how brave you were. You think, Thumper? The next day, Bambi practices his jumps over a pine cone. To this next one, he accidentally jumps onto Thumper. And then Thumper's all like, yep, you did it. And then the great prince is all like, what exactly are you doing? And then Bambi's all like, I'm practicing my jumps. And the great prince is all, I see. And then he just walks off. And then Bambi's all like, that makes no sense. Yesterday he really liked it. And it turns out the great prince is observing the forest. Thumper encourages Bambi to go ask him. He hops forward a few steps. Then once Bambi goes along, he hops backwards. By the way, if anyone's wondering, that's a scene I placed SpongeBob SquarePants credits theme over in another video. You can check that out if you like. And then the great prince is all like, you have to look, listen, and smell all at the same time. It requires 3 of the 5 senses mainly. Bambi tries doing all 3 at once. Like this, see? And then the great prince is all like, try and feel the forest around you. Does playing in the meadow. I feel it with my razor sharp hooves. If there was danger, they'd know to stop playing, and I'd run to them. And then Bambi's all like, but wouldn't you be scared? And then the great prince would be all like, maybe. I would still run to them though. A prince might be afraid, but he can't let phobia stop him from acting. And then Bambi thinks his father knows everything. And the great prince chuckles and says, not everything. And then he goes off because the forest is waiting for him. But then he looks back at Bambi and says, do you want to come? Bambi is surprised at first, but says, sure! Thumper looks at that, and he smiles proudly. And then his sisters go, big brother! And then Thumper's all like, aw, for crying out loud. And then Bambi tries to feel the forest while walking, but accidentally bumps into a tree. And then he says, well, I felt it all right. Pause for a minute, please. This is actually part 1 of my video. I'll do another part of this later. Please enjoy this video in the meantime. Goodbye.